So today's kind of technical review or presentation, since I've been doing the Doctor Who site, one of the biggest things I'm running into is trying to maintain a large amount of products in a spreadsheet is just ridiculously stupid to try and do. Short term, it's great because you get started, you kind of figure out what you want, and then from there, eventually, long term, you're going to want to build something like a product catalog, which ultimately leads you at some point to build either a database or use some other types of technologies. But today I'm going to focus on just building a product catalog. This could actually be anything from like a customer database, or it could be like an inventory system. It could be a POS system. What I want you to think today is just at the high level. When you're looking at building something or you're looking at collecting information, what are the things that you really should be looking at before you get to the technology? How can you pull out the information you need so that when you start looking at the technology pieces, be it database, spreadsheets, whatever, you know what you need, or specifically, you know the questions you need to start asking before you start picking a technology. Before we begin, let's look at some real-world examples of product catalogs and how they are used. So for example, let's look at the Amazon.com. Amazon is pretty much a huge online store filled with products, some services, and so forth. Their back end is one big, huge product catalog. Either it's their products or it's people interfacing with their system to sell their own products. At the end of the day, it's just a big catalog of products. So for example, if I wanted to find iPods, I would just type in an iPod, and it would bring up all the variable products that relate to iPods. So here I could click on the latest model of an iPod, and it would give me a little iPod Nano, some details about the product. This is just one example. Another example is in print. Here's Target. This is their weekly ad. So as you can see, you kind of have a list of products here. Some have descriptions, price, but because the general real estate of print is actually smaller, you don't have a whole lot of information as you do on the Amazon page. Another place you could look would be Walmart. Walmart sells products, so they have a big online catalog as well. Some things to think about with product catalogs is they're not just used for websites or print. Some vendors or manufacturers can use XML feeds to transmit their product catalog information or product information to third parties. You can also use JSON or some other formats. Alternatively, you could create a spreadsheet to hold some of this information. So, for example, my Doctor Who site, let me pull that up here. Where did it go? Doctor Who. Documents is. So if I pull that up. All right. So in one case, you can create a catalog here in a spreadsheet. So in your spreadsheet, you store a bunch of information like categories, images, titles, links to products, or any other information you want to store about products. Another way you can do it is through databases. How I do it for Doctor Who is I have a plugin called Huge IT Catalog. It gives me some of the functionality I need for a product catalog, but it's not perfect, which is typically why I'm looking to build an actual product catalog from scratch. So the big thing today is we're going to look at building a product catalog, which is going to mean understanding what makes a product catalog and design a generic real-world example. So at the end of this, you'll have a high-level view of what needs to go into a product catalog. So what we're going to cover will be, what is the product catalog? We're going to get into kind of the in and outs of what makes up the catalog. Why you need a product catalog. What typically goes into the product catalog. How to define the properties of your catalog, of the different components that you pull out. And then understanding the catalog relationships. So what are the differences, or how do your components or the pieces relate of your catalog? So what is a product catalog? Well, for starters, it's a place to store information about products. Again, this could be anything from my Doctor Who stuff. It could be something as simple as Rob's podcast. That could be his product. It could be a grocery store. It could be the books on your bookcase. It's just any place where you want to store information about products or things, or an item, for example. Typically, these types of catalogs are used to store information about inventories of products. Again, this could be cars, books, baseball cards even. For our purpose, though, we're going to focus on a generic catalog that should work for most product types and catalog designs. Now, this is going to be the most basic of designs. So there are going to be pieces that can be customized for your needs, but at the core, these will be the pieces or the things that you're absolutely going to want to have in your product catalog, regardless of what type of products you have. And then depending on the product types and its use, the actual information stored may vary. All right, so why do you need a product catalog? Well, in my case, I have a Doctor Who website, which has tons of affiliates. And right now, currently, I have well over 500 products that I have reviewed or I have descriptions for on my site. Right now, all this is stored in a spreadsheet, and there's a lot of information that I'm constantly finding that I'm missing or I need to gather. So we need a catalog to store large amounts of information. Keep track of our inventory if we have physical inventory. This could also be, instead of keeping track of inventory, you could be pointing to a vendor site and you could keep track of what inventories they have in stock. You could use this for buying products from a vendor or selling products to a consumer. So you have to keep track of how many items you have in stock, when you need to order, how often are you selling the items, and shipping them to your customers. What typically goes into a product catalog? Well, let's break it down. We have a product, a category, some images, and some vendor information. So at the high level, in a product catalog, you have to have a product. You have to have a physical item or something to showcase. Now, in most cases, you're going to want to categorize that. So if you're dealing with a clothing store, you want to break your products down probably by t-shirts, pants, leggings, arms, hats, or miscellaneous types of categories. Products may have, really you want to display some images for your products because typically when people can see what the product looks like, you tend to sell more. Buying cars means really going out, yes, you see the car on a website, but that's to draw you into going to a car site and actually physically looking at the car. And typically you want to maybe post some information about the vendor, be it Amazon, Walmart, or the vendor information could actually be the manufacturer information. It could be Honda, it could be GM, whichever, based on your product types.
So let's go look at a product. First, let's Google for a can of soup, and then let's take a look at what properties of a can of soup we can pull out that we would want to store into our product catalog. So for example, we could list things like the manufacturer, which is Campbell's, the product, which is tomato soup, it's a can of condensed soup. Other things we would want to potentially look at are going to be the nutritional facts, the ingredients, just to name a few things. So now let's go back and take a look at the properties of a product.
So stepping now into our different components, looking at the product properties, these are the basic components that really should be a part of any product. And you will start to see kind of a theme as we go through some of these different components. So to begin with, we need a product ID. This is going to be the unique ID of our products. This could be numeric, this could be alphanumeric, whatever. It could even be the barcode ID. It just has to be something unique that can distinguish this product from any other product in your system. A product name. Now, this can be an abbreviation. This could be the actual name. Typically, product names are going to be something distinguished, maybe something short, so that you can identify the product within your system. The product summary, a brief description about the product that you can use for websites, maybe for news articles, magazines, for displaying the information. So it's kind of a 1 or 2 liner that briefly describes the product. Kind of your 10-second pitch as to why they should look at this product or buy your product. Then you want to have product description. This could be the lengthy description, the 1 to 2 page technical document or specifications of the product, or just more information in detail as to what the product is. Product price. If you are concerned about pricing, where in my particular case, I started out dealing with pricing and I found out that through affiliates, it's hard to keep track of all your different vendors and what their pricing is. So I actually am collecting this, but I'm not using it. So product price is something that you really should have, but it may be optional as to if you're going to use it. The product price could also be your retail price, or it could be the wholesale price that you're buying from the vendor. And then product quantity on hand. Now, again, this is more in line if you actually have a physical inventory, or the product quantity on hand could be if you're pinging the vendor or the affiliate for the information to see if they actually have the product that you're referring your customers to. All right, like product, let's go in and take a look at what makes up the categories. So let's go back to Walmart. When you pull up Walmart, when you go up to the top, click the little all, this brings up all of the typical categories most people are looking for when they go to Walmart. So when you're looking at a product, try to define which categories or what type of groupings that you want to put your products into. So for example, we were looking at soup a minute ago. We would probably want to go under groceries. So we would type in, let's see, I don't see groceries here at the moment, but we can type in tomato soup again. Tomato soup. I could type. All right, there's Campbell's soup. So if you notice, it's the way they categorize it, it's under food, meal solutions, grain and pasta, soups. So when we pick our product, here again, here is how they grouped it. So food, meal solutions, canned groups, and soups. Looking at the product again, so let's just take a quick look. So at the highlight, they give you a brief description. You can read more. Their product name is right here, Campbell's Tomato Soup, and the size and quantity of the product that we're actually selling here, which in this case is tomato soup. Other categories you could look at, like, let's see, we could go look at music. So say you were selling products that had music, say hip hop. You have vinyl records, you could go to vinyl, and then you could go by brands. So these are just different things that you could categorize your products under.
So now let's go back and look at which properties we need to define for our categories.
Categories. So as I mentioned before, categories could be, if you're dealing with clothing, could be as simple as t-shirts, men's, women's, children's. So again, we need a category ID, a unique ID to distinguish one category from another. A category name, be it men's, women's, children's clothes, something that distinguishes what the type of category this product will be in. And then if you are going to be dealing with subcategories, you're going to want to have what's called a parent category ID. Parent category ID essentially says, if you populate this with the category ID of another category, this category is now a child of that category. So, say for example, I have category ID 1, category name men's. My next, I would leave product category ID blank. That would put men's as the parent category. So then if I had category ID 2, category name t-shirts, product category ID men's, now you would see kind of a hierarchy of men's, and underneath men's, you would have t-shirts. Now, if I had left parent category ID blank for t-shirts, you would have men's and t-shirts on the same tier. There would be no children. They would both be parents. And this is kind of a generic, and in most cases, a well-practiced way of defining parent and children relationships of category IDs. In fact, if you look in WordPress, when you actually define your post and you set up your categories for your post, the same thing happens. You can set up a primary category and a child category. Next, we have images. So when it comes to dealing with images, you want to find a group of images that help depict what your product looks like from a couple of different angles. So for example, my Doctor Who site, Doctor Who, bring that up. So if I were to go under my catalog, which has books, clothing, etc., let's go look at, let's go look at office. And let's take this fridge, for example. So on Amazon, it gives us two pictures of our fridge. It gives us a picture of it closed, and it gives us a picture of one with it open. Now, these are fairly large images here, but over on the left, you have what are called thumbnails, very small image depictions to let them know that they can click on one or the other to bring up the full image. When you're dealing with websites, this is very crucial to make sure that you get the images at the correct size for loading speeds and image quality. The other thing you can do to find more images, which I find useful, is copy your product name and go out to Google and type in your product name and go to images. Now, as long as you're not dealing with copyrighted material, you could actually go out here and find multiple images for your product. So here's one with the empty fridge open, which Amazon was not showing, but maybe I would like to show on my site. Or if you want to show how much you can cram into a fridge, here's a good picture showing a full 12-pack of soda. You know the old saying, a picture's worth 1,000 words. So the more pictures you can find that you can depict your product, the more a customer can see what they're buying before they actually buy the product. Or it can save them time from reading the description. If they see what they want from the picture, they don't have to read. They can just click the buy now.
So let's go back now and look at what we need to define for our image properties.
Images, again, we have an image ID, but images can be a little more tricky. So for the basic information, we want to describe our image. So we want to give our image a unique name, maybe some information about the height, the width, the image type, and the image location. Now, because I'm dealing with a blog and I'm using affiliates, my image location, in some cases, I'm actually pulling links from vendor sites. And in other cases, I'm physically downloading an image, modifying it, and storing it into my database or on my file system. So your image location could be a database. It could be a file system. It could be a link to another website. It could even be a link to Dropbox or some other location. Your image types, this is kind of interesting because without this, you would have to then look at your image location, and you kind of have to guess as to what the image is. In some cases, knowing the image type helps you render the image correctly. In most cases, your browser will typically render your images just fine, but if you're dealing with a standard application or you're dealing with print, sometimes the image types have to be translated, or they need to know what type of image they're dealing with when they're displaying these images. Also, defining the type helps you kind of categorize your images a little bit further. One other thing I would mention here, we're not showing image size, but size might become an issue, especially if you're dealing with trying to display templates with images and other information for your catalog. So you may want to add size as an additional property here. One thing to consider when you are dealing with images, make sure that your images have both a primary image and a thumbnail image. One thing that has kind of caught my eye recently is a lot of sites, well, not so much the sites, but a lot of the analytic tools like GT Matrix and the Google Analytics tools will hit you if you resize an image. So if you have an image that is 200 by 200, but you resize it to 100 by 100, they actually tell you it's better to have an image type of both. So you may want to have one that's 200 by 200, or have one that is 200 by 200, and then another one that's 100 by 100. So that's just something to consider when you're actually defining and storing your images.
So next we have our vendor information. So before we look at the properties, let's go look and see where we can get our vendor information for our products.
All right, so when we need to find the vendor information or to figure out what vendor information we need to record, let's go find our product in our Dr. TARDIS manufacturer. Yeah, let's see. Doctor Who TARDIS fridge manufacturer. Can't spell. Thank you. And it's out of stock. So in some cases, you can't get the actual product information. So what you want to do is you'll want to list the actual vendor information. So in this case, it's going to be thinkgeek.com. If you have an affiliate with ThinkGeek, you may want to store some affiliate information, website information, the link to the product. And if they have actual store locations like this one does, you could actually put a physical location if it's near you. But typically, if you're dealing with actual products, like, say, Campbell Soup, you could actually go to Campbell Soup's home and go to corporate. And you could list things like their headquarters, or if you have a wholesaler, you could put down a wholesaler. Maybe you go to Costco and you buy your products at Costco. or you actually have an actual manufacturer, so like Campbell Soup here. Or if
So now let's go back and
cars
look
you
at our
sell,
properties.
you may want to do 4 vendor properties. So vendor can mean a couple different things. A vendor could be someone that you're buying a product from, or a vendor could actually be the manufacturer of the product, or it could even be your affiliate. So vendor can kind of fall under a couple different categories depending upon how you're looking at your catalog. Again, a unique vendor ID is important. A vendor name, something that uniquely defines them. Typically, most vendors will have a physical address of some kind. If they don't, you could just store the website. Vendor address 2, city, state, zip, country, phone, and website. Now, country may seem a little odd in this case, but since this is a global economy, we have a lot of people in China. A lot of the Doctor Who stuff that I'm looking at comes out of the UK. In fact, some of it comes out of Vancouver, Canada. So having country in there is important because it actually changes what information you need to validate for like zip code or state or even city. One thing I did leave off here, I just noticed, but you may also want to add vendor email. But I kind of left this at a very high level. So there's a lot of things that can be added to these to make them a little more fluid, a little more robust. But this is just like the core information. This is just the basic information that you need, especially for vendor. So other considerations. So the other things to think about at the high level are what type of descriptions do I need for like, so the types of descriptions I have versus search results versus summary. So if you have a large catalog and you want to add some type of search capability, do you want to search by descriptions? Do you want to search by summary? What type of results will you get? So you want to kind of think about these things as you populate your catalog. Other things to think about is configurable products and options. Some products may have additional options. Some products may need to be grouped together, or a product may be a part of a kit. So you need to buy multiple pieces to your product to actually put a kit together. Some products may have additional accessories, or you may want to highlight some accessories with certain products. So these are some other things that you could actually add to your product catalog. Other things that I mentioned briefly were manufacturing part numbers, SKUs, barcode IDs, any other way to specifically uniquely ID a product. Other things to consider, print versus web catalogs. So if you're actually doing a print catalog, you're probably going to want to collect maybe less information, or the way you collect the information has to be really specific because your real estate is very small on print, especially if you're doing magazines or flyers. Now, web catalogs are a little bit different. You have more real estate, but the same token applies. You want to make sure that whatever information you're putting in there fits within the real estate that you're working with. Other considerations down the road, you may want to be able to import and export into your catalog easily. So you may want to write an importing tool or an exporting tool, or what information do you want to load in or out of your catalog. And lastly, the product availability. This typically tends more if you are dealing with some type of inventory type system, or when you're dealing with buying and selling products from a vendor to a customer, or vice versa. Next, let's talk about relationships. So again, we're talking at a high level, so I'm not going to get too deep into the technology. So right now, we're just going to look at understanding how the catalog components relate to one another. So I've modified the definition of what is a relationship. Typically, we would want to talk about the product catalog and its technology. I'm pulling the technology piece out at the moment, and we're just going to talk about the relationship as it applies to the product catalog. So a relationship in the context of our product catalog is a situation that exists between two components where one component has a way to reference the property of another component and vice versa. So in our case, it could be, all right, well, we have a product and we want to be able to associate an image to a product, or a product with a vendor, or the vendor, what products does a vendor have? So we go from a vendor to a product. So these are the types of relationships we want to look at. So how do they relate? How does product catalog, vendor, and images work? And actually that should be category. So types of relationships we want to consider. A one-to-one, product to a vendor, or vendor to a product. One-to-many. Well, a product could have many images, or a vendor could sell multiple products, or many-to-many. In my case, I have a product that has multiple vendors, and I have vendors that sells multiple products that I have. So I have a many-to-many relationship there. So let's look at just the product catalog relationships specifically. So a one-to-one, we've got products versus images, products versus vendors, and products versus categories. Now we could also have images versus vendors, categories versus images, and categories versus vendors. So these could all be interchanged. Another example is our one-to-many. So we could have products with multiple images, products with multiple vendors, and products with multiple categories. And then, of course, the many-to-many relationships, where we could have multiple products with multiple vendors, and vice versa. So starting at the very simple relationship of a one-to-one relationship, you have a product and an image. So if we're just dealing with one product and one image, we could add the product ID to the image properties tables, which gives us that one-to-one relationship. So an image ID, or we could alternatively add an image ID to the product properties table. Products versus multiple images. So now our one-to-many relationship. So we have a product with multiple images. So here we would want to define a different type of grouping or different type of category, where we define a product ID and an image ID, and I throw this extra one in because I've run into this more times than not, a sort order. So in this example, we would have a product which could potentially have multiple image IDs. So it could have, say, 3 images. But if I want to display these images in print or on a website, what order would I put these in? And that's where sort order typically comes in. So you could define your primary image that would display first, and then you could have your secondary images displayed second and third. Products versus multiple categories, same idea. You have a product ID with a category ID and sort order. And again, with vendors, same kind of concept. So you'd have product with multiple vendors. Now, where it gets tricky is when you have multiple products with multiple vendors, or again, multiple images with multiple products, which really doesn't make sense, except in some situations it can. With my Doctor Who site, it's been kind of interesting with that because I've actually run into some circumstances where I have a print image that is actually used for pillows, T-shirts, and different merchandise, but it's the same image. But the products are different products. So I kind of have a many-to-many relationship there. But typically, you're going to have a product-vendor, multi-vendor relationship because really, you're going to want to shop around. You have a product, you have a vendor, but maybe that vendor's not selling you that product at the best price. So you may actually have multiple vendors that you buy a product from. So in that case, you would have multiple product IDs. You would have one product ID with multiple vendors, and that vendor could also have multiple vendors could have the same product ID. So let's recap. So we've talked about what is a product catalog. Basically, a catalog of storing large amounts of information, typically used for inventory systems. Why would you need a product catalog? Again, for inventory, displaying information, storing information. Typically goes into a product catalog, products, inventory, some type of item or kind of inventory system that, or items that you want to kind of put in a system where you can catalog them by categories and keep track of different information. Defining properties, we've looked at how to break down the individual properties of each component of our catalog. And then we've looked at the different catalog relationships. So in the weeks to come, what I would like to discuss is we will then talk about picking a technology to build our catalog. This will probably be either a database, NoSQL, spreadsheets. I'll give a couple different examples of that. I'm going to walk through building a catalog. So we will actually go through the whole process with the technology. And then I will identify the required catalog transactions that will be necessary to put information in and out of our catalogs, how we would actually use the catalog. And then additionally, I will also add another layer to that where we will interface with the catalog itself. So by the time we're finished, we'll have walked through identifying what type of catalog we want to build, how we're going to implement building the catalog, the different types of interfaces with the catalog, and then what we'll actually build at the end is a application piece that will use our catalog for the Doctor Who site. So you'll have a fully functional end-to-end example and application when we're finished. And thanks. I know that was a little short. I kind of rushed through it just a little bit. Any questions, comments? Just shoot us an email at info@developernerd.com or contact us on the website. Any questions from you guys?
Question for you. When you talked about the parent category ID, so would that be considered like when you're designing your list item, would that be considered like a primary key?
Yes. So again, keep in mind that this is at the high level, but yes, the IDs are going to be your keys.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I got that. I was just wondering what you meant by the parent category IDs. And I was thinking, maybe I was thinking deeper than the way I should have. So the relationship.
No, you're thinking correctly. This was mainly meant to be a high level. I kind of want to step you in to the technology. So this is before you even look at the technology. You identify what you need. Mm-hmm. So we defined that we want a product catalog. And why did we want a product catalog? Well, in my case, I have the Doctor Who website. Okay. So I have a website that has affiliate marketing, and the main way I make money is by putting products on my site that have affiliate. So I have products. These products have to be put together in such a way that they are grouped together by category. Each product has images, and in my case, instead of vendor information, I have manufacturer information or affiliate information. So I may not show affiliate. I may just have a link to Amazon or a link to ThinkGeek. So I was trying to walk through everything I discussed here could be put in a spreadsheet. It could be put in a database. It could just be stored on pen and paper. But this is the very simple, the very basic components that you need when you're thinking about what information do I need to gather before I go out and put my site together, or before I go out and put like a news ad together, or before I go put together an online shopping cart. So like I said, these are just the basics. Now, if we, when you get a little deeper into it, that's when you look at the other considerations. So, so even though I mainly gave you the high-level components of product, category, vendor, so you could add other things like manufacturer. you could add things like product options. So you could have another grouping or another component of options. So additional options. So like if you're dealing with food, okay? So food, everything we have right here is great for the product on the shelf. Now, what about the ingredients? So you could have another component that would be just the ingredients, and then you could list the different types of ingredients that are in your product. Or if you're dealing with clothing, you could add another option of, okay, what type of materials is the product made out of? Mm-hmm. And then again, the print versus web, okay, that kind of falls again into the import-export, is if I'm doing this for print, you want to collect information or put information into your catalog a certain way that works for print. Meaning you're going to have very small real estate to deal with in most cases. Whereas with web, you can have large, you can basically do one-page ads for every single product. Whereas if you try to sell it to like a newspaper or a magazine, you can afford to do single-page ads in the entire magazine for your catalog. Not unless you're like Macy's and you put out your own catalog every year. Any questions on the relationships?
Oh, just a quick one, Michael. So in here on the high level, you haven't even begun considering the relationship like the one-to-many and all these different relationships for the database, isn't it?
Yes, because as you're collecting the information, if you don't put the right pieces together or you're not collecting the right information, you're not going to be able to build the relationships correctly. Okay. Or you'll get to where I end up getting to after about doing this for a week or two with the Doctor Who stuff. I found out quickly that I had to put together a catalog of some kind. So I took the layman's way out and I went and just bought a little quick catalog plugin for WordPress to get me through my initial growing pains. However, it was very limited and I'm not able to scale it at the rate I want to scale it. So that's why I'm walking through this whole product catalog idea, because I'm going to need to build my own product catalog. So I'm going to essentially walk you through step by step how to think about going out and building something like this on your own. So I'm going to give you all the different examples from the high level, from the concept, visualization of your idea, through the technology pieces, and all the way to the implementation. So right now, this one's just the high level. We've walked through the concept, we've walked through the pieces we need. So when we get to the next presentation, we'll talk about picking the technology, and I'll discuss the differences between picking a spreadsheet versus picking a database, and then what type of database to pick versus even XML and text files. I've dealt with some of those for web services and importing. We'll walk through building the catalog, so putting it into whichever technology we pick, and then how to like run reports and things of that nature. And then after we've got our catalog built, what type of transactions do we need to consider for putting information in and pulling information out of our catalog? Again, that import-export piece. And then interfacing with the catalog. All right, once we have the catalog, what do we do with it? Do we send it to a printer to print it? Do we send it to a web developer to put it online? What do we do? How do we interface with the catalog? So that's going to be the final piece of the puzzle once we get through that. So I'm looking at least another 4 discussions on this, possibly even a 5th discussion, depending upon how deep we get and how these kind of branch off from our discussions.